Hey everyone. So you'll have to apologize because my living room is very, very dark at the moment. Um, I had a lamp in here, and my lovely cat, who's currently sitting in my hand, um, decided to knock it off the coffee table. So where I'm sitting right now is fairly dark, and my roommate is doing something uh, in her room, so I don't want to bug her. So I'm trying to stay on this side of the apartment. Anyway, so, um, it's been a long time since I've posted a video. I'm sorry, college student. So anyway, today's video is going to be on something that I get asked here and there, just because of the volume of birds I have, I guess you would say, and that is about bedding and what I use to line the bottom of my birds' cages. Now, it really depends on what kind of bird you have and what you are um, comfortable using, and I'll get to that, um, with your birds. Um, Now, because I have large birds and small birds, I use different bedding depending on who I'm talking to in particular. Now, my little birds, I usually opt to just use plain old newspaper, and I'll tell you why. Newspaper is very cheap as far as bedding goes. Um, Actually, if you live in an area like I do, we get a weekend newspaper that is free. So a lot of the times, what I do is, especially because I live in an apartment building, which is really handy sometimes. I have a box at the bottom of the stairs, and everybody in the apartment building knows that I have birds. So this sign says that I'll take any standard size newspaper, no flyers. And then usually at the end of the week, I just go down and I pick up the box, and I've got lots. I've got tons to work with, which is nice. Another great thing about just plain old newspaper is that, um, depending on how handy you are, you can actually cut a whole stack of newspaper, which is usually what I do, and you can put a whole bunch of layers in the tray, so that all you have to do at the end of the day is take the tray out, fold up the top newspaper, throw out the top one, and then put the bottom one is the one underneath it is fresh. Um, Now, a lot of people are tempted to put, a month's worth of paper in the bottom of their cage, and that's fine so long as you do like a spot clean of the actual tray. Don't let the tray get all gross and disgusting just because there's, another 5 papers in the bottom of the tray. Another great thing that I've used in the past, but unfortunately, um, because of time restraints, I can't really use it, but it does make a very good bedding. It's called corn cob bedding. Um, it is the inside of the cob of a piece of corn, and what they do is they dry it and they grind it, so it comes out in little pellets. And this stuff is great because if you have that medium-sized bird where newspaper isn't really a good idea because their poops are too big and they soak through several layers of newspaper. Um, it's great because you can just kind of spot clean the cage with like a little kitty litter scoop, and then fill in the spots when you see them. Do a little clean around once a week where you can take all the bedding out, clean all the inside of the pan, and then refill the bottom of the grate, or not the grate, the pan. Um, like I said, I've used corn cob in the past, but I find that it takes quite a bit of time to really get all the spots. And I also found that um, it's messy. Um, if if you don't have a nice big, like a tall tray, it can be very messy because if your birds are like my birds, they like to, and even if they have a grate, they will get down there and throw it around. um, so that's one option you can use. Um, Another very popular bedding is called Carefresh. Now, there are several different kinds of Carefresh out there. You don't have to get the brand name Carefresh. There's also Boxo, which has recently changed its formula, so it's a little bit more pellety than it was before. It's just as soft, it's just as absorbent. It's got the same amount of odor control, which is excellent. It's got a different texture to it. I haven't noticed any decrease in function. My bird doesn't seem to care. Um, So essentially, what this stuff is, it's recycled paper most of the time. I'm not 100% sure about Carefresh, but I know Boxo is it's actually cardboard boxes. And what they do is they just send this stuff through a like a paper shredder, and then they soak it down. They press um, all of the water out of it, and then they let it dry, and then well they probably cook it, and then they just like crumble it all up. Now there are lots of videos on YouTube. I'm not going to go through how to make it yourself, but you can actually make Carefresh yourself. Personally, as cool as it looks, I might do it in the summer, but I live in northern Ontario, and just to put this into perspective, we're supposed to get 30 centimeters of snow, or it's not 30 centimeters. Um, we're supposed to get 10 to 15 inches of snow before midnight tonight, and then we're supposed to get another 10 to 15 inches of snow before noon tomorrow. So I really don't have um, anywhere to dry this stuff sufficiently. Um, in the summer, it might be something different because I can put them outside, which is nice. So anyway, you can make Carefresh yourself. Boxo, Critter Care, there's a whole bunch of them. Um, so that might be an option. Now, something that you might want to consider when you're thinking about what bedding to use is if you have allergies to something. Now, my mom is allergic to newspaper. Um, now, she doesn't have as much problem with the rolls of newspaper. If you go to your local newspaper, a lot of the time they will let you buy the end roll. Um, it's very, very cheap, but they don't like to use the ends of the rolls because if they get to the end and they're halfway through printing, they have to stop the whole machine. It's just a big hassle. Another nice thing is that they're on really thick cardboard like tubes, and what I do is the tubes are hollow. What I do is I use a saw and I cut them into about anywhere between an inch to 2 inch little bangles, and my birds just love them. So it's kind of like a double thing, which is really cool. Um, so if if you have allergies, you're going to want to watch what you use. Now, obviously, Carefresh isn't going to be dusty because it's been watered down and processed, whereas newspaper obviously isn't. Now, you also want to make sure that you watch what your birds are sensitive to. I have a particular friend who has a blue gold macaw. Daisy, if you put your nose in his cage, he is going to bite you. My cockatoo likes to try to feed the dogs. It's a trick because he doesn't really like dogs. So as soon as they try to take the, the pellet out of his beak, he goes to bite them. And then he thinks it's funny and he laughs and runs around his cage. I didn't teach him this. So my friend's got a blue gold macaw, and Jacob is actually allergic to dust particles. He has a very common disease in blue gold macaws. I can't recall what it's called. So anyway, she can't use certain bedding because of Jacob's um, allergy to them, and if it creates a lot of dust. Now, if you find that when you do change the paper, it gets very dusty, a really nice trick is to take a spray bottle, just plain old water, and spray down your cage, especially if you have dusties like cockatoos, cockatiels, Amazons, um, Quakers, stuff like that. If you spray the cage when you go to fold the paper or when you go to scoop the litter out, it doesn't like poof everywhere, which is really nice, and it's much better for your lungs. The last thing you want to do is get sick because of your bird's dust. Um, there are two bedding materials in particular that I really want to stress not to use. You do not want to use cedar, and you do not want to use pine. And there's a huge, huge reason for this. Um, Both of these trees have a very specific oil on them, especially cedar. And don't try to, oh, it's black cedar, white cedar, blah, 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 blah. If it has the word cedar in it, don't even touch it. It will, I'm telling you this from not experience, but I've seen it happen to other birds. It will make their feathers fall out. It is very, very toxic to them. It's very, very bad for their lungs. And people don't realize this because it smells nice, and they think, oh, well, it'll smell nice, so I don't have to worry about the bottom of the cage. Don't do it. Just don't even go there. Another thing you're going to want to watch is if your tray or if your cages do not have trays, they're like or not a tray, the grate between the bird and the top of the tray. Try to avoid using pelleted bedding. So something like yesterday's news, which is very popular for some people because it's very absorbent, it's very cheap, etc., etc. You want to avoid things that your birds will be likely to play with. Stuff like that is very enticing for your birds to play with. So if your birds can get to the grates, I suggest not using that kind of stuff. I remember going into a pet store once, and the owner had corn cob on the bottom of the budgie's cage, and they were rolling in it and playing with it, and all I kept thinking was, oh my god, one of these days, one of these birds is going to swallow it, and it's going to cause, you know, some big, some big issues. So, when you're looking for a bedding, and make sure that whatever you do pick is within your budget. The last thing you need is to, get used to working with something and you don't have any more money to buy it, or if something happens that you can only get it in one place, you want to make sure that you can always get it there. Been there, done that. It sucks. Um, so anyway, if you have any more questions about bedding or anything like that, shoot me a line. I've got a whole bunch of videos to do tonight, so hopefully I can get them all done. Anyway, I'm going to do my next video in the dark, and let me know if you have any other questions.